couple days later, the doctor saw my husband and said to him, you know, your mother-in-law is severely depressed and sad. So I went into research mode and read upon heartbreak, and read that heartbreak can actually change the shape of the heart. It can actually cause a section, if I'm right, to become enlarged and actually stop working temporarily, which forces other sections of the heart to work doubly hard and can lead to symptoms similar to that of a heart attack. Why am I telling you this? Because my mother left the doctor's office feeling better, because the doctor recognized what was happening, sat with her, allowed her to cry, allowed her to speak about what she was feeling, because she had been trying to hold the pain in to prevent us from feeling pain on Christmas Day, and her body just went into lockdown. But having spoken to the doctor, and the doctor addressing the emotional aspect of Mommy's heart issue, she left feeling so much better. There was a study done a while back on rabbits. Now, rabbits process cholesterol very much like human beings do. They store the plasma in their blood just like we do. And in this study, all rabbits were fed the same cholesterol-rich diet. One group, though, was placed in a lab where they were given human interaction every day. They were taken from the cages, they were petted, they were fed, and they were looked after, they were loved. The other set of rabbits were left in the lab with no human interaction at all. 1 year later, when autopsies were done on both groups of rabbits, they found that the set that had had human interaction had 60% less aortic disease than the ones who had been left alone, even with the same levels of cholesterol and blood pressure readings. Hearts need love to thrive. Our hearts need emotional support to be healthy. Indeed, in the blue zones of the world, where people are found to live to ripe old ages and maintain active, healthy lifestyles, it has been concluded that one of the key factors is strong family bonds and social interaction. My mother has a big family, and we rally around her and hope that with time, she will heal from this heartbreak. But what about the children in this country who suffer the physical effects of heartbreak, of fear, of violence? What about those, the elderly, who can't speak for themselves, who don't even have the luxury sometimes of understanding what they're feeling or going through? What are the messages they're getting that help steer the direction of their lives? Studies reveal that nearly 30% of crime in Jamaica is committed by children between the ages of 16 and 20. We read of it every day. The resolution for conflict is often down the road of violence. What's happening to our youth? They have started affairs of the heart with rejection, anger, and violence, and it is becoming the norm. As a writer, I'm an eavesdropper. I listen to people's conversations in public places. I watch body language. I observe how people relate to each other. And in so doing, it adds a lot of richness to my writing. But there's a downside. Sometimes I see and hear things that are not so great. And what I have come to realize is much of the language we use to communicate, to discipline our youth, is harsh, sometimes destructive. I've observed the bus stops, the patty lines, the schoolyards, and I've heard the things they say: ugly, dunce, stupid. I've seen the faces fall, the shame, the shoulders slump. How do we intercept the messages that have begun to be absorbed into those hearts? In Zimbabwe, where the rate of suicide and domestic violence was so high, with limited resources for counseling, the Friendship Bench initiative was implemented. It sounds exactly as it is: a bench where grandmothers who are trained in counseling sit, and citizens can just go and sit and talk, upload, and get some feeling that they're not alone in the plight. The rate of suicide and violence dipped so drastically that the program has actually been implemented in New York City. Talking, positive words of love and encouragement, empathy, guidance in the midst of a dark time, a stent. What are some of the signs of depression? Insecurity, constant need for acceptance and reassurance, distrustfulness, needing to be right and in control all the time, and with that need to be right, blaming others for behavior, suffering from untreated emotional issues and thoughts of suicide. Why am I telling you this? Because in the past few weeks, we've heard about several women whose lives have been lost at the hands of their estranged partners. The tragedy left us all shocked. But the signs are there in the heartbreak of our youth. What are the signs of an abuser? Insecurity, constant need of acceptance and reassurance, distrustfulness, needing to be right and in control all the time, and with that need to be right, blaming others for their behavior, suffering from untreated emotional issues, and thoughts of suicide. One of the grandmothers on the friendship bench related a story of a man who'd come to her. He was distraught, enraged. After struggling to pay rent and support his family, his wife had moved in with the landlord. The grandmother said this man came to the bench with his axe on his way to kill the wife and the landlord. She was able to show him from the outside of blindness of rage that after this act, his children would have neither mother or father, and that everything he had worked for would be lost because of the selfish actions of someone else. She said she was able to speak reason into him, and he went on to divorce his wife and move on with a very happy life. Talking, positive words of encouragement, empathy, guidance in the midst of a dark time, a stent. It's complicated, the human heart, as you all know. It holds on, though, to so much more than just cholesterol. The emotional plaque of pain and rejection that, if left untreated, staunches a fulfilling life. The affairs we choose become plagued with feelings of rejection and unworthiness, holding back so much greatness. Now, in the past, Jamaicans who are here, in the past episodes we've had of the women who lost their lives, how many of you heard the statement, then why she never just leave? It's so much easier to go straight into the victim blaming and shaming than the question, what is happening in a society that is seeing rise in domestic abuse and the loss of lives? In my book, Lest We Find Gold, I have tried to lay down the tapestry of the human heart as it develops from childhood and takes us into adulthood, where we choose our partners, our careers, our friendships. I've tried to show how we create the stories of ourselves based on messages we receive throughout our lives. Worthiness, beauty, capability, strength, weakness. I've tried to show how bottled up emotion, misguided messages can lead to catastrophic explosions that shatter lives. In Lest We Find Gold, we meet Millicent Marshall, a beautiful, strong, seemingly together woman who suffers abuse from her husband and hides it from her family and friends. The familiar paradox: strong, capable, smart woman, hiding bruises and broken limbs suffered at the hands of a loved one. And I'm going to just read a section from the book to give you an idea of how the book deals with the initial abuse. There's a space at the left side of my mouth, right where my incisor should be. The right one is chipped. Sometimes my tongue snags against it and becomes raw. I've learned how to say certain words so that my tongue won't brush the jagged edge. It's become a habit. Sometimes it sounds like I have a lisp, but for the most part, I've learned to navigate my tongue around the tooth and mask the missing sharpness of my speech. The front teeth have turned yellow. At first, I thought they would have turned black, those front ones. I was happy when the darkness crept back up into the gum and left the yellow instead. They look like they're stained with the residue of a curry. I wear light-colored lipsticks now, neutral glosses and brown stains that downplay the yellowy contrast on my naseberry lips. I should go to a dentist, I suppose. We can afford it. I can fix my teeth. I could get into the chair of the best dentist on the island just by saying my name. The best of the best. Millicent Marshall, I could say, wife of Montwell Marshwell. And the appointment would be made for us that very same hour. If I wanted to go, I could get veneers and caps and all the stuff that makes teeth yellow, like sparkling white and brand new. I have my father's teeth. Mommy's front teeth turned in slightly. Once when I was a child, she told me she had a sweet tooth, and for years I thought that's what having a sweet tooth meant, that your teeth were crooked. Mine and Daddy's were as straight as Queen's Highway. We both have perfect smiles. Well, had. Mine are now tinged yellow, and then there's that space in the side. I look in the mirror and smile. Curry. I press my lips together, raising my cheeks into the semblance of a distracted smile. Perfect. The only one that came out was that incisor. I remember that day. I remember it was at night we had guests, and I was worried if they'd noticed the gap in my mouth. I tried so hard to save the tooth. It had hung from the gum for a while. The root had come loose. I remember knowing that. The minute the fist slammed into my cheek, I remember the crunch of minced flesh, a crescendo of snapping grizzle beside my ear. Chocolate slid down my throat. I felt the tooth let go. Even as I fell to the ground, I remember feeling for it with my tongue. I'd lain there, not bothering to curl up. I'd used my tongue to hold the tooth in place. I'd stopped curling long before that. I'd learned that the face and the thigh pains went away after a couple of weeks. But the back, man, the back hurt like a mother forever. I'd stopped curling. That incisor day, the familiar moss of our carpet had cushioned my back while the loafer buffeted against my flank. I pressed up with my tongue, distracted from the blows as I was worried over the tooth. The loafer had pulled away for an instant, dissatisfied with my lack of attention. He preferred when I curled up. He liked my hands over my head, my legs pulled into my belly, the curve of my spine a ridged canvas for his art. He wasn't as structured with his raised foot then, not as many soft places, not because he cared about the damage, but what would he say if his foot sank into the flesh of my belly? Millie fell and punctured her spleen. She fell on my foot while it was raised, and her spleen ruptured. No, that wouldn't work. So I'd stopped curling. That incisor day, the loafer had been dissatisfied with my distraction. It had hesitated for just a second, then industriously resumed its work with added force. My muscles bunched tight, rubbery sinew repelling the leather onslaught. I'd released my tongue for just a second to give an obligatory gasp, a grunt of satisfaction. The loafer had rested again on the carpet. I had just lain there, staring up at the mottled gold and reversed arrow of Monty's belly. I felt for the tooth again, rattly and chocolatey against my tongue. My face was blank. I've learned to do that too, to keep my face empty. I don't cry when Monty hits me. I give him the gasp to show I am present, that I heed his wrath, but I don't cry. I used to. I used to cry when the same hands that had caressed my cheek and cradled my breast stamped magenta tattoos on my skin. I used to cry because the shock had made the pain so much worse. But the shock had long since gone, and the tears along with it. The pain had become as familiar as the monthly ache of my bleeding. So much worse, as long as I didn't give him my back. I don't cry. I only give the utterances to fulfill what is required of me to live on this silky carpet. Our eyes met that incisor day. Monty's red with temper, mine dry. Mine were blank, but my jaw was taut. My tongue held the tooth in place. It made Monty's face twist. I guess it was disgust. It must have been annoyance that I tried to save the tooth. A little stone was wedged into the rib of his soul, light gray and smooth. It fit perfectly into the grid of rubber beneath the loafer. It had hovered above me for a second before stamping a farewell into my thigh. My body had jerked, but my face had remained blank. My tongue pressed the tooth in place. I held it there. In the end, it came out. It had been hanging by just a ribbon of flesh and fell into the sink when I stumbled to the bathroom and opened my mouth to inspect it. I'm not sure why I bawled. I don't know. I don't cry when Monty hits me. That morning, I bawled. My belly wrenched up the saltfish and okra it had just eaten. It must have been the tooth falling out, I don't know. Okra seeds and chocolate clotted in the gap. It was the only one that came out, that incisor. The front ones had turned yellow, and there was a chip on the other, but that incisor was the only one that came out. I felt so damn ridiculous, looking in the mirror at the hair puffed out of its cornrows, cheek fat and ready for its purple, and bawling because my tooth had slipped down the drain. So, thank you. With this message today, I just wanted to lay down that we're raising a society of children who are watching and hearing our words. They are becoming men more and more, like Monty, and more the women are becoming victims. With this message, I hope that each of us as teachers, parents, neighbors, taxi and bus drivers, coaches and doctors, realize that the messages we give need to be ones that uplift and empower. Every child is entitled to healthy support for their emotional development. It's as important as advocating for healthy school lunches and cutting sugary drinks out of the diet. Be a friendship bench, and when you do, remove the masks that deem you perfect, so that those struggling realize it's okay sometimes not to be okay. Don't just reach the hand behind you. Reach down low. As Bob Marley said, bend down low, let me tell you what I know. Right now in Jamaica, we are bottom heavy. Over 60% of our population is between the ages of 16 and 30. Our future lies in that 60%. We need to invest in those affairs of the heart. We are the stents that have to try to remove the blockages and repair the valves of this country. And maybe we can build a foundation that pumps fresh, oxygen-rich blood upward and throughout, bringing more life and so much less pain and death. Thank you so much for having me.